held it all together through the meeting and the drive. You smiled at the cashier and you said, "I'm doing fine, I'm alive." You texted back the group chat with the laughing face emoji. You made it through the dinner and the homework and the slowly dying light of another day that asked you to be strong. But the moment that the shower turned on, you let it all go wrong. The water hit your shoulders and the first sob hit the tile. The kind of cry you've been postponing for a day, a week, a while. The ugly shaking cannot breathe, gasping at the steam. The kind of breakdown nobody hears because the water swallows every scream. You slid down to the floor and let the shower be your back, and the tears and the water mixed together like a holy heart attack. You didn't pray with words because the words had all expired. You just cried, that was the prayer, the rawest kind of fire. But God heard you in the shower when the water hit the sound. He heard the prayer without the words. He heard you hit the ground. The shower isn't soundproof in the kingdom where He lives. Every tear that mixed with water was a song He won't forgive Himself for missing, so He didn't miss. He sat there on the tile. God heard you in the shower, and He's been there for a while. You cried about the money in the job that doesn't see your worth. You cried about the loneliness that followed you since birth. You cried about the friend who left without a reason or a call. You cried about the parent who was physically there but emotionally a wall. You cried about the future that looks nothing like the plan. You cried about the person you're becoming versus who you thought you'd stand. You cried about the small things that are secretly the big, the dish in the sink, the text ignored, the tiny crack inside the rig. Nobody taught you how to fall apart in a healthy way. Nobody said the shower floor is holy ground, it's okay to stay. The world said keep it moving. The world said you're overreacting. The world said other people have it worse, like pain has a ranking. But God doesn't rank your suffering on a scale of 1 to 10. He doesn't say come back when it's worse. He says come now, come again. Bring the ugly cry, bring the mess, bring the snot and the steam. I'm the God who catches every tear, and I've never missed a scream. David cried in the cave of Adullam with the darkness all around. Hannah wept so deeply in the temple they thought a drunk they'd found. Jesus wept at the tomb of Lazarus, even knowing he'd be raised. If the Savior let the tears fall free, then crying is not a phase. It's the body's holy language for the things the mouth can't say. It's the overflow of everything you've been carrying. stood back up eventually. You turned the water off. You looked at yourself in the foggy mirror, and you let out the softest cough. Your eyes were red, your chest was light. Something had shifted in the core. Not because the problems vanished, but because you're not carrying them alone anymore. You dried off and you put the smile back on for the ones outside the door. But something in the atmosphere had changed from what it was before. Because God met you in the breakdown, and He didn't look away. He saw the strongest version of you on the weakest kind of day. And maybe tomorrow you'll be back on that same tile with the steam. And maybe next week too. And maybe that's the thing. The shower becomes the prayer closet. The water becomes the veil. And the God who hears in secret is the God who never fails. You don't have to be articulate. You don't have to make it neat. God speaks fluent tears, and He's listening on repeat. The shower cry is valid. The breakdown is a door. And the God who heard you falling is the one who's building you a floor. So if tonight the only prayer you've got is the water and the cry, if the sentences won't form and the faith feels like it's dry, God heard you in the shower, every single drop of pain. He's collecting every teardrop, and He's turning them to rain. That water's something beautiful.
And they don't make a casserole for the best friend at the door. They bring the food to the family, and they grieve the one they bore. But nobody asks the best friend how the best friend's doing tonight, because the world saves all its sympathy for blood and marriage rights. He was the one who answered every call at 2 a.m. He was the one who drove 4 hours just to say, I understand. He wasn't on the emergency list, he wasn't next of kin, but he was the closest human to the person I had been. We met in 7th grade behind the gym where the weirdos used to sit. He shared his sandwich with me because my mom forgot to pack the kid. From that moment on, it was the two of us against the noise. 2 kids who didn't fit the world, so they built their own with choice. He was the best man at my wedding. I was there when his son was born. We built a friendship out of nothing, and it never showed the worn. 27 years of inside jokes and drives without a plan. He was the closest thing to a brother that my mother never gave this man. But God, how do I bury the person who buried my worst days with me? How do I stand beside a casket when the casket holds my history? They say the grief will soften, but the absence only grows. He was the one I'd call right now to tell him that I'm broken, but he's the reason that it shows. The world lost a person, but I lost the place where I was known. The best friend 9:15. She said he wanted you to know. And the sentence crossed the line between the world that had him in it and the world that didn't anymore. And I sat inside my car and I screamed against the door. I drove to the hospital and they let me in the room. And he was lying there so still, like the silence was a bloom. I held his hand and I said everything I should have said before. You were the greatest man I knew, and you're the one I'm living for. The funeral was beautiful. The pastor said the right things, I suppose. His wife spoke and his mother spoke and his son wore daddy's clothes. But nobody called my name. Nobody asked if I had words, because the best friend isn't listed in the order of the thirds. I sat in the back row and I cried without a sound, because the grief of a best friend is the loneliest kind of ground. No condolence card is addressed to his best friend since the gym. No bereavement leave is given for the boy who shared the sandwich that started everything with him. But God says I invented friendship before I invented the ring. I gave Jonathan to David because I knew the soul would need a thing that's different from a marriage and different from a birth. The best friend is my masterpiece, the evidence of my worth. He says the grief you feel tonight for the one who knew your name is the same grief that I honor. It's not lesser, it's the same, because love doesn't read the legal forms to decide who's allowed to mourn. Love says you lost your person, and I'm holding you through the torn. I still call his phone sometimes just to hear the voicemail pick up. Hey, you've reached me, leave a message. And I talk until the minute's up. I tell him about the game on Sunday and the joke I heard at work. I tell him that his son is growing taller and his wife still wears his shirt. I tell him that the hole he left is wider than the years we had. I tell him that the 7th grade behind the gym was the greatest thing I've had, and the voicemail doesn't answer back. The beat just cuts me off. But I swear I feel him listening from the bleachers up above. They say you only get a few real ones in a lifetime if you're blessed. The ones who see you at your lowest and they don't love you any less. The ones who don't need an invitation, they just show up with the truck. The ones who carry what you can and never call it being stuck. He was that one, the only one, the unreplaceable and rare. And the world feels like a crowded room where I can't find him anywhere. But heaven has a gym behind the bleachers where the misfits sit and laugh. And my best friend saved a seat for me, always saved the other half. So if you lost the friend, the world won't give you time to grieve. The one who wasn't blood but was the blood you choose to bleed. God sees the best friend mourning in the back row of the church, and he says your grief is valid, your loss is not. The worst is first. The best friend isn't second to the family or the wife. The best friend was the chosen one, the volunteer. voluntary life, and the God who made the friendship will reunite it one more time behind the gym in heaven. Same spot, same rhyme, same rhyme. He's there, he saved your seat. He always His pew is a park bench and his steeple is the sky. His offering plate is a paper cup that the people walk right by. His hymnal is the wind that pushes through the trees at dawn. And the homeless man's cathedral is the open air he's on. He wasn't always here. There's a before inside the after. There was a house, a wife, a job, a yard, a sound of children's laughter. But the layoff led to the bottle, and the bottle led to the door, and the door led to the sidewalk where he'd never been before. He lost the house in March and the wife in early May. The kids went with the system and the man just went away. Away from everybody who once knew his name and face, until the only thing that recognized him was the cold and open space. The shelter has a bed, but the line is always long, and the rules don't let you in past 9, so the timing's always wrong. He sleeps beside the overpass where the trucks shake through the night, and the stars become the ceiling of the only room in sight. But God lives on the sidewalk just as much as in the church. He sits beside the shopping cart and the blanket and the search for the next meal in the next corner and the next night that's warm. The homeless man's cathedral is the eye inside the storm. God doesn't need a building to receive the prayer of the poor. The sidewalk is the altar and the sky is heaven's door. He prays every morning with his hands inside his coat. He prays with the pigeons and the traffic and the note of a saxophone that somebody playing down the block. And his prayer sounds like a whisper in the middle of the clock. Lord, I don't need a mansion, I just need a bed that's mine. I don't need a feast, just a meal that comes on time. I don't need the old life back, I know that ship has sailed. I just need to know you see me and I haven't been derailed. The people walk right past him like he's part of the concrete. The joggers and the strollers and the businessmen's elite, they look through him like a window to the somewhere they must be. And the invisible man on the sidewalk is the loneliest thing to see. A child stopped once and handed him $1 and a smile. The mother pulled the child away and said, don't stop for a while. But the dollar and the smile were the first human touch in weeks. And the homeless man held both of them like the treasure that he keeps. But Jesus said, whatever you did for the least of these, you did for me. And the least of these is on the corner of your street. Can't you see? He's not lazy, he's not worthless, he's not got there because he chose. He's a series of events that nobody fully knows. One bad month, one lost check, one medical bill that broke the back, and the middle class became the underpass. And there's no easy way back. And the church that sings of mercy on a Sunday morning bright walks past the mercy opportunity on Monday morning's light. He found a Bible in the trash behind the restaurant last week. The pages were water-stained but readable, and the words began to speak. He opened to the Psalms because the Psalms understand the low. And David on the run from Saul knew what it was like to have nowhere left to go. He reads by streetlight now, one chapter every night. And the Word of God on a wet page is still the Word of God alight. The homeless man's theology is simpler than the school. God provides, God sees, God loves, and that's the only rule. A woman from the church brought coffee one December afternoon. She sat beside him on the bench and didn't leave too soon. She said, "What's your name?" He said her name. She recognized he was the boy who sat behind her in 11th grade. Same eyes, and the tears that came weren't pity, they were the recognition of the fall. That any one of us is 7 in bad decisions from the wall. She didn't fix his life that day, she couldn't write a check that big. But she said, "I see you," and sometimes that's the writ that holds a man together when the system lets him drop. "I see you on a park bench" is the most expensive phrase on the block. So if you pass a bench tomorrow with a person underneath the sky, remember that the cathedral isn't brick, it's in their eyes. The homeless man is praying in a church without a roof, and God is in the congregation. That's the proof. Buy the coffee, say the name, sit down for a minute on the bench. The kingdom isn't comfortable, it smells like sweat and trench. But the God who had no place to lay his head understands the ground. And the homeless man's cathedral is the holiest place. The blue lights came on a Wednesday while the cartoons were still on. She was eating macaroni when the men told Daddy, "Come along." They put the silver on his wrist and walked him through the door. And a 7-year-old watched her superhero scrape against the floor. She ran to the window screaming, "Daddy, where are you going tonight?" He looked back with the eyes of a man who just lost the fight. He mouthed the words, "I love you," through the glass of the police car frame. And the little girl in the window would never see her house the same. Mama sat her down that night and chose the careful words. Daddy made a mistake and now he has to go somewhere that hurts. It's not because he wanted to, it's not because of you. Sometimes grown-ups do the wrong thing, even when they know the truth. The girl said, when is he coming back? And her mama said, I don't know, love. And that was the longest answer ever given from below or above. Because I don't know, to a 7-year-old is the same thing as forever. And the bedtime prayer that night was the first one they said without him together. Lord, protect the children when the handcuffs steal the home. When the father's in the prison and the family's on their own. The child didn't commit the crime, the child didn't break the law, but the child is doing time in a sentence she never saw. God of the fatherless, be the daddy in the empty chair tonight. Hold her when the nightmares come and tell her it'll be alright. The kids at school found out, because the small towns never keep a secret long. They whispered in the hallway, and the whispers felt like songs. A shame she didn't author, but was forced to sing out loud. Her daddy's in the jail, and the girl became a cloud that floated through the classroom open. No one saw the rain. A second grader carrying a grown-up kind of pain. The first visit was the worst. The metal detector and the line, the guards who checked her shoes like she was guilty of the crime. The room smelled like the cleaner that the schools use on the floors. And Daddy sat behind a table that was bolted to the doors. He looked different in the clothes they gave him, smaller somehow too. Like the building took the pieces that she recognized and threw them somewhere she can't reach with her little 7 hands. But she hugged him anyway and said, I drew you in the sand. She showed him a picture of the family with the sun above the roof. And the daddy in the crayon drawing was the daddy of her youth. Not the one behind the table, not the one inside the walls. The one who pushed her on the swings and caught her when she'd fall. But God sees the children of the incarcerated too. He doesn't skip the prison families when he's deciding who to pursue. He says the sins of the father do not define the child. I specialize in the generations that the world has defiled. Oh, Joseph went to prison and he came out running a nation. Paul wrote half the Bible from a cell of desperation. The prison is not the ending for the man behind the wall. And the daughter standing at the window is not destined for the fall. The years went by like visiting days, 30 minutes and a buzzer. He missed her 8th birthday and her 9th. He missed her becoming a runner. He missed the school play where she played the angel with the wings. He heard about it on the phone and cried because the missing stings. She wrote him letters every Tuesday with the stickers and the pen. She said, Dear Daddy, I still love you. Please come home again. And the letters in the prison cell became the wallpaper of his fate. His daughter's handwriting was the sermon that kept him from the waste. He came home on a Thursday afternoon in April's gentle rain. She was 14 now and taller, and the years had brought the pain of growing up without the presence that a father's supposed to be. but she ran across the yard like she was 7 and still free. He held her so tight, the breath became a prayer neither of them said. And the man who went to prison came back different, came back led. He found God in the cell, he found the Bible in the dark. And the daughter who waited for the man got back a father with a heart. So if your daddy's behind the wall tonight and the visit's never long, if the phone calls cost too much and the distance feels too strong, God is the father in the gap between the sentence and the home. And the child of the incarcerated is never fully alone. Your daddy's mistake is not your story. His cell is not your cage. God is writing you a chapter on a very different page. And the day he walks back through that door, the mercy of the Lord will pour the child. Day one, white walls, a bed that's not my own, a suitcase full of nothing and a phone they said they'd hold. The intake form asked questions I had never said out loud. How much, how long, how often? And the honesty was proud. Not proud like victory, proud like a wound that finally shows, like the bone that's been broken underneath the skin nobody knows. The counselor said, welcome, this is where the heart begins. And the hardest thing about the heart is admitting where I've been. The group meets every morning in a circle of the cracked. 12 strangers with the same disease and the same desire to go back to the version of ourselves before the substance took the wheel, before the one drink, one hit, one pill taught us how to never feel. A woman shared her story and I heard my own inside. Different drug, different decade, same attempt to hide. The man beside me shook so bad his coffee spilled the rim, and I realized the shaking isn't weakness, it's the body letting go of him. But God walks the hallways of the rehab center too. He doesn't wait outside the gate until the 30 days are through. He checks in at the front desk and he sits in every chair. The God of the recovery is the God who's always there. He doesn't need you sober to begin the conversation. He loves you in the trembling, he loves you in the devastation. They took the mirrors out the bathroom for the first 72 hours. They monitor the windows and they count the evening showers. Not because they think we're criminals, but because the withdrawals are the war. And the body fights the healing like it's begging for the poison it was for. Night 3, I couldn't sleep. My skin was crawling and my bones were loud. I prayed for the first time in years without an audience or a crowd. I said, God, if you're real and if you're here inside this room, I'm the worst case scenario and I need you to consume whatever's left of me that's still worth saving. requirement for grace. He said you don't have to clean up first to come before the throne. The throne was built for the desperate, and you qualify, you're not alone. And something cracked inside the walls I'd built from shame and years. Not a breakdown, more like daybreak, the first light through the fears. I opened up the Bible to the thief upon the cross, the one who did nothing right and still got paradise because he asked. And if the thief on the cross could get to heaven in his final breath, then the addict in the rehab center isn't too far gone for death to be reversed and life to start again with shaking hands and all. Because Jesus didn't say clean up first, he said just call. The 12 steps feel like mountains when you're standing at the base, but the God of recovery puts his fingerprints on every single pace. Step one is the surrender, and surrender is the prayer, and the prayer inside the rehab center is the loudest in the air. Day 15, I looked into the mirror they gave back, and the face was thin and tired, but the eyes were coming back. Not all the way, not fully healed, but the fog was lifting slow, and the man beneath the substance was beginning to show. I called my mother from the payphone, and she answered on the first ring, like she'd been holding it for 15 days, just waiting for my offering. She said, I've been praying. I said, I know. She said, how are you, son? I said, I'm not okay, but I'm better than I was, and the battle's just begun. Day 30, the last morning, the suitcase packed again. But the man inside the suitcase is not the man who checked in. He's fragile, he's not finished. The road ahead is steep, but the God who walked the hallways of the rehab center promised he would keep. The counselor said, remember this, the hardest day is day 31. When the world outside the walls pretends the war is done, but the war isn't done. It's daily, it's hourly, it's breath, and the God you met inside these walls will follow you past death. So if you're in the white walls tonight, and the ceiling feels too close, and the shaking won't stop coming, and the shame is at its most, God is in the rehab center.